Namaskar. Today I am going to take you on a virtual tour of Qutub Minar and the complex around it. Whenever you go to a place of tourist interest or even to a city for a visit, etc., it is always good to know beforehand about it. Then you can enjoy that place or that tourist place better. History stands witness to the fact that whenever we lost against foreign invasions, it was not due to lack of valor or numbers, but because of the strifes among rulers of our lands. If we do not learn the right lessons from the pages of history, the history might repeat itself. In 1191, Muhammad Ghori came from Afghanistan to loot and plunder North India like his predecessors had been doing for long. But Prithviraj Chauhan wounded and defeated him in the battle at Tarai in the Punjab. So badly was he wounded that he had to be carried out of the battlefield on a stretcher. But this act of chivalry on the part of Prithviraj Chauhan was going to subject the whole of India to slavery for the next 800 years to come. At that time, there were 27 Hindu and Jain temples standing tall in this complex. They stood on pillars inside the first ever mosque called Quwwatul Islam Mosque, meaning Might of Islam Mosque, behind the tower and all over the complex. In their enthusiasm to build the first ever mosque in India, except for Cheraman Masjid in Kerala, the Turks demolished those magnificent temples and used material from them to build the first ever mosque in India, Quwwatul Islam. Had this Qutub Tower and the mosque stood along with those magnificent temples, the view would be beyond imagination. But this was not to be so. Now the pillars and the stones had the figures of gods and goddesses on them. Islam does not pray to any form, figure or sculpture. They pray facing the west direction in India. In Western countries, they face east, where their holy city Mecca is located. So they defaced those deities, put plaster on them and used them inside the mosque. In time, the plaster came out and the figures became visible. Since this is un-Islamic, the first ever mosque in India was abandoned. It is not in use for prayers today. Qutbuddin Aibak built the first story in 1197. Second, third and fourth were built by his son-in-law Iltutmish, who succeeded Aibak after his death. The fourth story was twice struck and damaged by the lightning, and in 1368, the then ruler Firoz Shah Tughlaq repaired the fourth story, added the fifth and lined both with marble. Today, it stands 72.5 meters tall with 379 spiraling stairs leading to the top, closed for the public because 45 children died in a stampede in 1981. It was a Friday, the entry was free, and groups of school children were inside when the electric power failed and it became dark. Panic gripped the foreign and Indian tourists trapped inside and resulted in the tragedy. In 1312, Alauddin Khilji started to build another tower in the vicinity of the previous Minar. He wanted to raise this tower twice the height of the existing tower and twice as broad. But even before the first story was finished, he died and no one took over the construction. So it stands today as a mass of rubble and stones. Look at the airplane flying above, in stark contrast to the medieval minars or towers. The Muslim monuments are always placed on a platform and face west like this Alai Tower. The Qutub Minar, however, seems to sprout from the earth, has no platform and faces south. This gives rise to the belief that in effect, the Qutub Tower was already there. At least the first story was. It was built by Prithviraj for his wives to offer water to the rising sun, which is a very popular ritual in Hindu mythology. It was common for the Muslim invaders to renovate an existing Hindu structure and then attribute its construction to the ruler of the time. The epigraphic evidence on top of this closed gate of the Qutub Minar says the Minar was built by Qutbuddin Aibak, the Sultan. The further proof strengthening the belief that the first story was already in existence before the Turks occupied the area are the windows in the Qutub Minar. They open towards west from the second story upwards. This is the grave of Iltutmish. It was covered by the roof, which came off after years of neglect and plunder. Notice the bell and chain, tassel, lotus, diamond emblems motifs, and Quranic inscriptions on the grave. Outside the grave of Iltutmish is the extended courtyard of the now abandoned mosque done by Alauddin Khilji in 1311. Also adjoining are the three freestanding stone screens added by the Khilji. Next to the freestanding stone screens is the southern gateway to the mosque. Iltutmish was the second Sultan of Delhi from 1211 until 1236. The epigraphic evidence above the southern gate states that this mosque was constructed by Muhammad Ghori. Broad view of the eastern gate from outside the mosque. Notice the three conical domes over the east wall of the mosque. Hindu masons did the Muslim bidding. They did not know how to build the rounded domes, an earliest example of the Indo-Islamic architecture in India. With this rounded single dome above the Alai gate, the Muslim architecture in India came of age. Notice the difference in domes. The iron pillar, 99.3% malleable iron without manganese, it has stood unrusted for the last 1600 years in the open courtyard here. There is an engraving in its middle. This marble tablet has the English translation of the engraving on the iron pillar. These are the defaced deities on beautifully carved pillars on which stood the Hindu temples. Scattered stones from the demolished temples. View of the madrasa and adjoining ruins. In the middle is the flattened grave of Khilji or Muhammad Ghori. Madrasa is an Islamic seminary intended to impart education. This one was for the royal family and including teaching royal manners to the new entrant to the royal household or the harem. A stunning view of Qutub Minar, a closer view of the Alai Gate with Minar in the forefront, the landscape beyond the Alai Gate, the holy grave of Imam Zameen. He was the Imam of the Quwwatul Islam Mosque. This tomb was constructed by Imam Zameen himself and he was buried there after his death in 1538. In 1825, a British engineer, Colonel Robert Smith, decided to beautify the top of the Qutub Tower. He built this cupola and put it on the top of the tower, but it looked like a silly parachute hanging up there. So in 1848 it was brought down and it rests on the lawns there. A panoramic view of the gardens with the sundial in their middle. Such graves are everywhere in this complex, even inside the courtyard of the mosque and on the landscape around. These graves are unknown ones. Whenever a new ruler would take over, he would invariably try to build another city in his name. The stones and other material from the previous city would be liberally used to construct the new city. The inhabitants of the new capital would then bring their dead to bury in the ruins of the erstwhile city, hence the scattered graves. Qutub Minar is the first recorded foreign settlement in India. It has many superlatives, like it is the first recorded settlement out of the 7 cities of medieval Delhi. This is the highest stone tower in India. This was the largest area with the maximum number of people living in there for the longest period of time. The area around which the next 2 cities of Delhi, Siri and Jahanpana, would be established later. Dhanyavad.